I'm not a fan of jazz, and I don't think anyone in this room is a fan of jazz. I don't think anyone really likes it. It's a role we all play, we act like it's part of our lives, but my problem with jazz is that it sounds like itself. It sounds like jazz. When I hear it, I don't think, oh, I love this song. I think, that's jazz. And to prove this point, I'm going to play a jazz song, and check out within yourselves when you start checking out and when your thoughts start to wander. You could raise your hand when you do it. I'll do the same. Let's see. Right here. Same spot, right? Right here somewhere. We're done. We're done here.
Hey everyone. So, keeping in the spirit of this whole 2023 year in review thing, all these videos that I'm making, I thought I'd do one solely on jazz music. I think that it's no secret that since I started getting involved in this whole vinyl community thing on YouTube, that I have had a little bit more of a renewed interest in jazz. When I was in college, that was kind of where I first dabbled and got introduced to it by classmates, and I kind of explored jazz a little bit back then. That was well over 20 years ago. I put it down for a while, and then the only time I would ever revisit jazz would be really the albums that I already had. I didn't really branch out from anything that I already owned. When you get involved in something like this and you're talking music and there's an exchange of ideas, it's very easy to be influenced. And it's an influence that I totally welcome and totally have embraced. But the one thing that I wanted to avoid was being solely stuck in just listening to releases of yesteryear, which is nothing wrong with that. There's plenty for me to learn there and explore there. But I also wanted to be tapped into what was new and what was current and what was relevant. So there were 6 albums this year that came out in 2023, jazz albums that came out this year, that I really spent a good amount of time listening to. One of them I talked about in a recent video where I talked about some 2023 releases that I've added to the collection, and it was Yusuf Day's Black Classical Music. But there are 5 more that I haven't really talked about, and I might talk about them again later. We'll kind of start with the more obvious ones on the International Anthem label. Jamie Branch's posthumous release. Sorry for the glare. It's just where I'm recording from. Anybody that follows jazz and kind of follows jazz collectors in the vinyl community, especially anybody that follows International Anthem, is well familiar with Jamie Branch. This particular album has received a lot more press this year than her previous 2 records. I'm sure that has something to do with the fact that it's a posthumous release. It is an unfortunate reality that a lot of times artists get more attention once they have passed on. I think there's a possibility that what we are experiencing with this release is just a further evolution of where Fly or Die's music was going as a group and where she was going as an improvisational artist. There's just something about this particular album and something about how I've connected to it personally that, I don't know, I've just given it a lot more attention. It's a beautiful, beautiful record. The next record, and You've seen a lot of other people talk about this one. It's Let Us Be by Danielle Vavalle, and it's a trio record with Jeff Parker and Anna Butters. A lot of people highly recommended his album from last year, Panama 77. I finally got around to streaming that one, and then I went to this one, and I immediately ordered it online at Lunchbox and went and picked it up like a couple of days later. There was something about the first impression that I had of these three like working together. It's quite an immersive listen. You kind of feel like it's very live sounding the way it's recorded, and the fact that it was recorded outside. I'm so glad that I finally got around to listening to this and didn't put it off any further. Another artist that I have seen recommended is James Brandon Lewis. I can't remember who exactly recommended it to him, but Dave showed Jessup Wagon, which came out a couple of years ago, and then I believe Bill picked it up while he was in Charlotte at Premium Sound. But then I saw this announced, and it's James Brandon Lewis and the Red Lily Quintet, and it's called For Mahalia with Love. And it's a dedication to Mahalia Jackson, the legendary gospel singer, one of the greatest singers of all time, period, despite genre. And it's basically a collection of arrangements on traditional gospel songs that she had a hand in kind of making famous. On the inside, there's this insert, a letter that James Brandon Lewis wrote to Mahalia. And he talks a good bit about his grandmother. His grandmother saw her when she was younger and how impactful Mahalia's performance was on her. So there's a lot of modern jazz releases, particularly on the major labels. And those modern recordings always kind of have like a modern sheen to them that almost, in my opinion, makes the music kind of sterile. But this music is recorded in a way that it sounds almost timeless. It could have been recorded in the 60s or the 70s as much as it was recorded in, the 2020s. It has a very earthy, rootsy, natural quality to it and how it's recorded. And really, that's kind of how it should be. This gospel music that's been around for years. It should sound that way. But this is excellent. I highly recommend this record if anybody out there hasn't heard it. So last year, a record store owner turned me onto the label Astral Spirits. It's very experimental, out there jazz. I picked up an album off of the Astral Spirits label last year, Red, Green, Blue, that I was a big fan of. And in this group, I have really connected with, and it's KVL, which stands for Kirchner, Van Doorn, and Lux. It's Quinn Kirchner on drums and percussion, Danielle Van Doorn, I think that's how you say the name, on acoustic and electric pianos, organ, mellotron, and then Matthew Lux on bass. All three musicians are credited with playing electronics on this record. So because of the instruments that this trio plays, which essentially is drums, keys, and bass, I am a big fan of Medeski, Martin, and Wood, which is drums, keys, and bass. These guys, though, are far more out there than Medeski, Martin, and Wood. There are some moments where they really do kind of lock into a groove, but for the most part, it remains pretty free and you don't really know where it's going. This is volume 2, by the way. Volume 1 came out in 2020, I believe. I probably haven't done the best job of selling this record, but I do highly recommend it. And if you've never explored the Astral Spirits label, check it out. The last one that I'm going to talk about is the latest from the LA jazz collective, High Pulp. This is called Days in the Desert. High Pulp plays a certain brand of fusion that's a little bit more modern and a little bit more contemporary. There's a strong presence of electronic music, as well as even kind of dipping their toes a little bit in kind of hip-hop sounding beats. There's a modern kind of funk, modern kind of R&B sound to some of these recordings as well. They're almost the kind of band that you really don't want to pigeonhole in jazz, but I don't really know how else to explain it. And of course, a lot of the guests on this record are jazz musicians. Jeff Parker, who I talked about earlier, James Brandon Lewis, who I talked about earlier on this album. Also Brandy Younger. Then there's the electronic musician Daedalus. This is also the type of album that I don't know if some of you jazz purists are really going to like as much as I do. This is very much in the type of modern jazz or jazz-influenced music that I thoroughly enjoy. I feel like if you're a fan of Flying Lotus or Thundercat, I think you really might enjoy this album. Definitely one of my favorite jazz releases of 2023. Struggle getting through this one. I am horrible at talking about jazz music, if you can't tell. Probably better if I don't talk about it, but I did want to share with everyone what I have kind of been into this year and what I've been listening to. I hope everybody's doing well out there. I hope everybody's surviving the holidays. It's not a fun time for everybody, to be honest. Some of us really struggle. It's really become about my kids, if you can't tell. And so that brings a little bit more joy into it. But anyway, I hope everybody's doing well. All right, cheers.
Digital gramophone makes no sense.